Hi and welcome back to Dusty Book Sniffers. I'm Nicole and today we're here for my weekly wrap-up. Well, good morning or good evening wherever you're watching from. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to spend with me today while I prattle on about the books that I read last week, which there was a few that I got through last week, so I'm pretty happy about that. I didn't realise that I had read that much. But if you are new here, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for stumbling across me, and I hope that you stick around and join me for all my bookish content. If you haven't yet done so, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon beside it, and then that way you won't miss out on any future uploads. And as always, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up as well. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for taking some more time out of your day and spending it with me. It's lovely to have you here. All right, so it has been a pretty epic week for reading, and I am really surprised because normally when I'm this busy or have been that busy getting the magazine out, I don't have a lot of time to read. But the books that I read were absolutely fabulous to just breeze through. They weren't exceptionally long books either. And all the books this week have been immersive reading. So I've listened along with the book. So that always makes it a little bit easier for me to focus and not get distracted by my phone and not get distracted by, you know, what's happening over on the other page. And my Kindle, I seem to read really fast on my Kindle. I don't know, is that the same for you as well? Do you find that when you're reading on your Kindle, you can read a little bit faster and get through your books a bit faster? Because I seem to be able to do that. So I did listen to them, and some of them I listened to while I was working as well, so I wasn't actually sitting there reading along with them. Now, I also read 2 bingo prompts this week as well to catch up on one. I didn't quite finish one. I actually forgot about one that I was supposed to finish by Friday, so I caught up with that on the weekend, and it was a true crime one, so it wasn't that long. Although it was still long enough, but it wasn't that long, and it was pretty easy to listen to because I only had that one on audio, and so I was working while I was listening to that one on Saturday. And then another one that which we received on Friday was so the one that I was supposed to read by Friday was about birds, and so it was a true crime one that I picked. And the other bingo prompt that I got this Friday just gone, that was for to read a book that was hyped as a page turner. Okay, so grab a cuppa. It's going to be a bit of a lengthy one because there's 6 books to talk about. Okay, grab yourself a cuppa, sit back, get on the treadmill, Kelly. If you're watching this, Kelly, get on your treadmill or do some weights. That's a little bit of an inside joke between Kelly Reads a Lot and myself, because she's been using my my videos as a workout buddy. So I've been keeping her company while I've been sleeping. So Kelly, get on the treadmill. It's going to be a long one, so be prepared. Take your water, don't forget. All right, so basically grab yourself a cuppa, sit back, relax, and listen to what I've got to say about the books that I've read this week. Hey everybody, I just finished A Splendid Ruin by Megan Chance. So that is what the cover looks like. Obviously it's on my Kindle. It's a lot nicer in the app because it's in colour on my tablet. But yeah, I just finished that, and this book was very surprising actually. When I first started reading it, I thought, I don't know about this. Like, it's a historical fiction for one, so let's get that out of the way. It is set around the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, and the main character is May Kimball, and she has just lost her mum. Her mum passed away, and she's been sent to live with her family in San Francisco, and they're part of high society, so to speak. So, yeah, it wasn't what I expected this book. Like, at first I wasn't really getting into it, and I wasn't too sure why I wasn't getting into it, because it's written well. It was descriptive, it was describing the scenes and all that sort of stuff. But I just thought it was going to be like, you know, one of those novels where it just waffles on and doesn't really have any substance, excuse me. But I was very, very pleasantly surprised. This book ended up being so much more than what I thought it was going to be. So as I said, it was set around the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, the major one. I have never really looked into that, and while I was reading it, I thought I did a search just to because she was describing the devastation and all the rest of it, and I did a search. I'm like, oh my god, that was full on. But anyway, I digress. So basically, she ends up in San Francisco. Her mum has passed away in 1904, so this is a couple of years before it happened. July 1904, she ends up in San Francisco, living with her family. Their name is the Sullivans, and they are, part of society. So they're well off. They live in an affluent part of town. They have servants, the whole lot. And when she arrives there, everybody's welcoming and all the rest of it, except for her auntie. Her auntie doesn't greet her like everybody else. Her auntie is locked away in a room, suffering from headaches and so she's portrayed as having these headaches all the time and all the rest of it, but there's something quite not right. And as you go through the novel, and May Kimball is the main character, as May goes through the house and stuff like that, she's noticing these little things, but she's so caught up in the whirlwind of her cousin and her uncle and being in San Francisco and having just lost her mum and all the rest of it, that she doesn't really cotton on to what's happening. And as I said when I was talking about it in my TBR video, this has a high society, murder, betrayal, madness, lies, secrets, the whole lot. So May doesn't know who her father is, and obviously her mother came from society, but she left to go and live in New York because there was a problem with her father. He was of high society as well, and basically he was nowhere on the scene. So she has no idea. So she's trying to find out who her father is, sort of, because she keeps getting pushed off the track and all the rest of it. Now, I can't really talk too much about it. When I started reading this book, I didn't think it was going to be anything of substantial at all, because it was a little bit airy-fairy, but as I said, the writing was really good. She was the author was very descriptive in what she was describing. I felt like I was there, but it wasn't until part 2, because it's broken up into 3 parts. And I should also mention there's also some revenge in here as well. So in part 2, it really took off. Like it just took off. The story, and that was about 100 and something pages into it. But prior to that, now having read the book, I know that part 1 needs to be like that, so it sets the scene, because it's showing her, it's showing you, the reader, everything that's going on, and it's giving you little tidbits through it. So it's a little bit of a mystery at the same time, like, why are these people making these comments, like sink or swim, or, and why is she being photographed so much to be in the society papers and all that sort of stuff, and why is the maid saying to her, be careful and stuff like that. So there's all these little, what do you call them, like Easter eggs throughout it, that is just giving you that there's something big coming. And it built that up really well. And then part 2, it just took off. And then part 3 is when the earthquake happens. And then, the story flows on from there. Now, I can't really say too much more than that, because if I say too much more than that, I'm actually going to give the story away. And I just think that you really should read this book. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. As I said, it's a historical fiction set in San Francisco. And the main character is May Kimball, and it was a good book in the end. Like, at first I wasn't too sure, but I'm still only going to give it a 3 stars, because it wasn't an exceptional book, but it was still a really good book to read on. As you can see, it's a very rainy day here, so it was great to read on a rainy day. So it's 3 stars from me, and I do recommend this book because I think you'll really enjoy it, especially the twist. Like, so some of the things that happened in the book, like, it makes you sit there and go, I don't think I'd like to jump in a place. And like, some of the things, like, were, when you read a book and it's just like sharp and quick, and like it's describing something, but the words are so sharp and quick, you don't register what you just read because it's sharp and quick and horrific. There was some of those things in here, and it was just like, oh. you know, it like takes your mind that just split second to think, oh, did I just read that? Yeah, especially there's one thing in the earthquake scene that it was just like, I can't believe I just read that, but it was there. So 3 stars from me. I do recommend this book. It's called A Splendid Ruin from Margaret Chance. And I will check in after I've read my next book. Hey everybody, I just finished an amazing book. Now, I know I say that about all the books that I read. Let's just get one thing straight. I'm not a writer, so anybody that can write a book, you do an amazing job. And so this book is amazing. Anyway, the book that I've read is called The Lobotomist's Wife. It's by Samantha Green Woodruff, and it was published in 2022. I believe it was released in February, and it is a debut novel. So, very exciting. Didn't realise that. And this is what the cover looks like, for those that are wondering. And yes, I am on my tablet because my Kindle went flat while I was reading, and I only had a few chapters to go, so I wanted to get it out of the way. And anyway, so The Lobotomist's Wife. I have a lot of thoughts on this this book. So first, number 1, it's a debut novel. Number 2, it just come out. Number 3, it is a fictionalized story of an actual psychiatrist and neurologist, and he worked from the 30s to 1972, I believe. However, the names have been changed, and there are a couple of stories in here that she worked in to the story that actually did happen. Just the names were changed, except for one wasn't. And so yeah, and the wife is not based on the guy that she based the story, like used as inspiration. The wife is not based on his wife. Okay, so the true life guy that she based it on, his name is Walter something II, and I'll put that at the bottom of the screen. And his wife was an economist and an alcoholic. So in the author's notes, she said that she didn't want to base the wife in this story as that story. She wanted Ruth to be a strong, confident woman, career-orientated, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so that's the background of the book. Okay, I'm giving it 4 stars. So I'll say that because I forgot to say that in a couple of my ones last week. So 4 stars. I listened to this on audio and also read it because most of them are coming with audio and it just makes it easier. And I read it in one sitting. It's only got about 300 pages in it. But oh my God, this book is amazing. And I know I say that all the time, but oh my God, this is a really good story. Like, I could not stop listening to it. I even listened to it when I went to pick up my daughter. So basically it's following the story of, it's called The Lobotomist's Wife because obviously she's the main character. It is from her point of view, the book. And so she has lost her brother. He came back from World War I, and he subsequently was shell-shocked, and he eventually killed himself. We learn that very early on in the book. And then so to appease their sorrow, that her family, and she's from quite a well-off family, they built a hospital for the mentally ill. Now, I don't want to use the word asylum, but essentially that's what it was. It was all mental patients there, but they had different areas and stuff like that. And it was completely different than the way mental asylums were depicted of that day. So, and I should say it's a historical fiction as well. So basically they've built this hospital. Ruth, that's the main female character, she is working in this hospital. She's got quite an established and well, like, high up position, like an administrative assistant. So she's the assistant to the head of the hospital. And the head of the hospital, Charles, is a lovely, progressive man for that time, I guess. And he gives her a lot of free range sort of thing. Like, comes and goes with the patients. She's a very gentle, nurturing sort of person. She has no children and she's unmarried. And then early in the book, she meets they want to bring on another doctor to the hospital, and she's interviewing, and subsequently she meets a doctor named Robert Apter, I think his last name was. I'm not good with remembering names, but his name's Robert. Okay, we'll just go with that. And so she subsequently is basically just taken with him straight away. He's quite charismatic. I can never say that word. He's got a lovely personality. And and so she wins him over, he wins her over, and she pretty much hires him on the spot. He's got all these ideas of where he wants to go. He's in the midst of mapping the brain and taking photos of the brain, and he's been looking at cadavers and all that sort of stuff, and he's teaching in a school as well that's close to the hospital in New York. And so I think it was New York School of Medicine or Psychiatry or something like that. So that's sort of that's just brushed on quite briefly, so not a significant part of it, but that was what he was doing. Anyway, subsequently they end up falling for each other and they get married, and then they go away on a honeymoon, and he meets a couple of doctors that are one doctor's doing the same as him, mapping the brain and all the rest of it, and they're competing for who's going to get the medical association's blessing for their technique and stuff like that. And these two doctors meet these other two doctors that are working on frontal lobe and the ability to change someone's negative behavior into positive behaviors, and they're experimenting on chimpanzees and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, both these doctors that are mapping the brain, Robert and this other doctor, which is from Spain, I believe, they are both fascinated by this, and they're both very excited by it, and they go away and they think and they come up with stuff. And then the doctor that's from Spain, he came up with a lobotomy, I think they called it, which was slightly different than a lobotomy. But this Robert and another gentleman that come into it, Edward, he was actually a neurosurgeon, so he was performing the surgeries. And so they were performing these lobotomies, and they were getting good, developed, and yes, they got permission to do it, and it actually, they were having success. But then it seemed that this Robert character got a little bit maniacal and wanted to just go for it and just lobotomize everybody, so to speak. It wasn't quite like that, but that's how it sort of seemed. But anyway, he wanted to do more and more lobotomies and stuff like that. So when they did it originally, when they did a lobotomy, they drilled through the head and then they took the piece of the brain out, and subsequently that would have a reaction, obviously, on the brain because you're taking a piece of the brain out, and it was a positive effect most of the time. But there were problems, that, like with any new medical treatment, there were problems. They were having good effects on people. They were not keeping up with their obsessive compulsive behaviors or their negative behaviors or their violence or anything like that. Like in some cases, it was just rendering them catatonic. And so this was going on, and then over time they started to realize that they could do it in a different way, and then he developed what they called the ice pick lobotomy, because it looked like an ice pick that they used. And so what they did with that, they'd give them an electric shock on the temple, which would knock the patient out, and then they'd go up under the eye and take the piece of the brain out. So over time, this was all happening, and he was getting a little bit carried away, and he was doing hundreds of these. He was going out on the road, like he could do them in his office and stuff like that. Like there was one that he did, it was in a hotel room. There was one notable one, and apparently this is actually true. I don't know, because I don't know anything about the Kennedys, but apparently Joe Kennedy had a child named Rosemary, and apparently this supposedly actually happened. She had a lobotomy that went bad, and so from what I can gather, she must have had actually some mental retardation, and Yeah, and then they did the lobotomy on her, and essentially just trapped a toddler in an adult's body because it went horribly wrong. That actually supposedly happened, or she supposedly had a lobotomy, and I don't know. As I said, I didn't look into it, but in the author's note it was mentioned. And yeah, so anyway, they did this. They just kept doing this, and he just got out of control, and he was like doing this is a bit of a spoiler. There's one incident where his wife is looking through his records after she's starting to think that something's not quite right with what he's doing. Like, took her a while, but anyway, she's reading through a file, and you could, like, it was his notes in the file, and from the first one, he actually did 3 lobotomies on this woman. So the first one was a success, and she went away, but she became obsessed with food and become obese, and then she had another one because she started getting angry and stuff again, so she had a second one, and that one, then she came back for a third one, and when she came back for a third one, she was like even bigger again, and she was covered in feces and just like completely regressed to animalistic behavior and all that sort of stuff. And so he did a third one on her, and that one killed her because, like, I'm sure you can only take so much out of a brain before you start dying. Yeah. So basically, yeah, and then it just goes through the story, and like, it was a fascinating story. And I think maybe it was a little bit more fascinating because, one, I'm interested in that sort of stuff. But macabre, maybe. Slightly macabre. I don't know. I don't know what that says about me. But anyway, yeah, I'm interested in that sort of stuff and why they use that, why they think they needed to do that. Like, I understand that we need to go through progressions and all the rest of it. And the fact that there was author's notes in the back that how she did the story just gave me an even better appreciation of the story and how she come to it. And that it was also, you know, she's taken some of the stuff from this actual real life person. And yeah, so I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure that you would enjoy it. Like, if you like historical fictions with a mental health twist, and like, yeah, and then a good twist at the end of what happens and whatnot, like, yeah, you'll thoroughly enjoy it. Like, I could not put it down. As I said, I read it in one sitting and just flew through it. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I know I say that about all my books, but when you can't write and you're reading other people's babies, essentially, I'm going to say I thoroughly enjoyed it. It is very rare that I'll go, this was a shit story. Don't even bother. And I will do that occasionally, like Betrayals a couple of weeks ago. Don't bother. Like, it's not even worth reading. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, so that is The Lobotomist's Wife, another one off my list, and I'm about to start. Actually, I've got to go and charge my Kindle before I can start the next one, but yeah. Hi everybody, I have just finished reading Train to Moscow, and yes, my Kindle is charged, and it is by Elena Gorgakova, I think it is how it's pronounced. Not 100% sure. Not real good with Russian names, any names for that matter. But anyway, this book is a new release. It came out at the beginning of March this year. It is a historical fiction. It is set in post-World War II in Russia. And yeah, I wasn't real fussed on this book to begin. Like, yeah, I wasn't real fussed on it. Basically, it's definitely a 3-star. Like, it's well written. For me personally, it jumps around a little bit too much. So I got lost track of where we were at in the timeline. So the timeline goes from just after the war in 1945-46, and then it jumps into like 1960. So that's the timeline, and it sort of jumps around a little bit, and so I found it very confusing and hard to keep up with where I was in the timeline, and I was reading along with it, and a couple of times I had to go back because I had it in audio because I had other things to do as well. So I listened to both audio and also read it, and a couple of times I had to go back a chapter to figure out where I was. The only consistency for me was when there's some diary entries from Sasha's uncle who has gone missing in action, and it's following her story and her story of when she was young up until she left home at 17 or 18, and because she wanted to be an actress. And so it's following her story, but it's interjecting her mother's story, her grandmother's story, her uncle's story, and her friend's story, and there's an underlying love story in it as well. As I said, I found it very confusing, although I'm still going to give it I'm at a 2.5 to 3, so I'm gonna round it up to a 3 because someone else may really enjoy this, especially if you like reading post-war Russia or post-war European and love stories and stuff like that. This one just didn't do it for me like some of the other books I've read this month. And I am comparing it to those books. I just found that it just didn't do it for me. So as I said, it is set in post war Russia, and she's basically trying to escape the oppression that she's feeling in her small village. And when she was younger, she heard on the radio Three Sisters, which was like a play, but it was on the radio. So basically she heard that, and she knew right at that moment that she wanted to be an actress. So from that point on, it was pretty much her just looking forward to being able to go to Moscow and be accepted as into the School of Arts, so to speak, into their acting college. And only 25 get selected. So that is the whole premise of her story, of her getting on the train and going to Moscow. And then the story plays on once she gets to Moscow, then it follows her story there, her becoming an actress and all that sort of stuff. But as I said, it jumped around a lot, and I found it very difficult, except for the parts about her uncle who had gone missing. He was missing in action, presumed dead by the family. And so she found his, at one stage there, she found his war journal, which had made its way back. Got a fly buzzing around. Made its way back to the family, and she found it hidden when she was younger, and she read through that. And then, so basically that was the only timeline that I was able to keep a track of, because it was coming through the novel, and it was and it was just talking about how she was feeling and how it guided, essentially this war diary, it guided her life and wanting to get away from the oppression of her small town and go to Moscow and whatnot. And so, but then while I could follow along with that, there was a couple of times I had to go back and reread some stuff, and I listened to it in audio and also read it as well because I had other things. It's been a busy week, so I've done a lot of listening to audio this week. And so, so when she was talking about her mother or her grandmother or her father even, and her friends and stuff like that, it was really difficult for me, and this may not be for everybody, but just for me and maybe where I was at this week, I found it a little bit difficult to keep up with the moving through the timeline, because 1 minute we'd be in, let's say for argument's sake, we were in 1957, then all of a sudden she was talking about when she was like 8 years old, and so we'd go back again, and it was quite jarring. I found it very jarring. Now I didn't have a problem with her writing or her descriptiveness or even the emotion that came through in her writing, and the author's writing. I didn't have a problem with that. It was just for me the jumping around of the timeline. There's a lot of like secrets and everything in this story as well. Like there's a lot of lies and secrets and all that sort of stuff. And so this is all just like, all these little bits and pieces are being scattered out throughout the book, and you don't really get closure on those things. And so I really need to get rid of this fly. It's just bugging me. Of course, it doesn't bug me until I'm recording. Yeah, so it had lots of secrets and lies and all that sort of stuff in it, and it was scattered out through the book, but I just didn't really like how it wasn't tied together. But it was in the end. Like, in the end, it all came together. But it like, as you were going through the story, she'd brush on something, and then it'd go to something else. And it was just, I found it very scattered, and it was a struggle for me. Now, it might not be for someone else. This book may just not have been for me. I really liked the premise of it. As I said, on the Goodreads thing, it just said post-World War II Russia, a girl must reconcile her tragic past with hope for the future, and that it was full of family secrets, passion, loss, perseverance, and ambition. Like, I thought that was going to be a really good premise for the book, and it was to a certain degree, but as I said, I struggled to keep up with it. It jumped around a little bit, and as I've said, I'd much rather give an honest review than say, oh yeah, it was great. But, you know, it did have its good points too. Like, I did like the writing. She did make it descriptive for me, and, you know, I was able to picture it to a certain degree, and all that sort of stuff. But it was just the jumping around, and even really, like, there wasn't really much in the way of character development either. She was quite flat as a character. I didn't, like, I sort of, at one point there, yeah, I was rooting for her to, you know, to become an actress. But when she sort of, you know, I thought about it a little bit more, she was quite flat as a character, and it was more the narrator was telling the story, and it wasn't actually coming from Sasha. And yeah, so I did struggle. Like, I guess I prefer my books where it's actually coming from, you know, the main character's point of view. You know, and there was an underlying love story there, but it was almost like a non-event, if that makes sense. Like, I know I said that I'm just really struggling. Like, I don't want to diss what the writer has done. Like, she has done, you know, like, she's a writer. Oh, gotcha. She's, you know, she's writing, and she's putting all her heart and soul into this. And, yeah, I just really struggled a little bit with it. So I'm just going to leave it there. I'm only going to give it 3 stars. I don't want to give it 2 stars because, as I said, the writing was good and the descriptiveness was good, so it didn't bump it down. So I'm going to leave it at 3 stars, and I'm going to get on to my next book. I just finished another book off my Kindle Unlimited to read list, and it was called Reluctantly Home by Imogen Clark. And this one is just a cozy sort of read. And it was a pretty easy read, and I read it today. Like, I started it today. Technically, I started it at 12:30 last night. My daughter got home later. I was sitting up waiting for her, and I spent a lovely evening with some friends on Zoom, as we do every Friday night, and it was really good to catch up with them. So, yeah, we were laughing and giving each other crap and all the rest of it, and it was one of our friends' birthdays, so it was nice to spend it with her, even though we couldn't be in the same town, because we're scattered all over. Anyway, I digress. As I said, I finished reading Reluctantly Home. Now, I purely picked this one off Kindle Unlimited for the cover. I just really loved the simplicity of the cover. And believe it or not, that push bike actually suits this book really well. So the story is about Rose, or Pip, as she's called through the book. She was known as Rose in London, and it starts out pretty, you know, standard. She's driving along and all the rest of it, and subsequently, and this happens in the first couple of pages, a tragic accident changes her trajectory in life, and so a little boy run out onto the road, and she struck him with her car, and subsequently he passed away. And so she it's set in 2019, and basically she ends up going home. So it's because reluctantly home. She grew up in a small town in Suffolk, and basically, yeah, so she was reluctantly has gone home. She had escaped from there when she left. Her name is Pippa, and yeah, so when she left home, she changed her name and all the rest of it to fit in with everybody. And so she's gone back home, and she's trying to get through the grief of having struck this little boy and subsequently him dying. And so the story is about, like, sort of about how you get trapped in your own head and how you deal with blame and guilt and all that sort of stuff. And then there's a flip side of that story as well. It's also telling the story of Evelyn, and she was an actress in the 1970s, and basically she had a situation happen to her that altered her life as well. So so it's telling her story, and then it's also telling Pip's story as well. So it's swinging between the two. But as Pip is back home, she's been home, sort of it jumps to her being at home, and she's been cleared of any wrongdoing of the accident and all the rest of it, but she's still dealing with her grief and all that sort of stuff. So she's back home, and everybody's sort of, you know, walking on eggshells around her and all the rest of it. No one really wants to discuss it and whatnot, and she's just going about her business, and she's, to keep her mind off things, she's working in a charity shop. Well, subsequently she comes across a box of books, and in that box of books was a diary, and the diary belonged to this lady Evelyn, that the actress from London that had come back home because of a situation. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but I will say that Evelyn came back home because she was pregnant, and she had nowhere else to go, and she had to quit the job that was going to make her a big star to come back home to. She chose the baby over her job. And there's a whole series of events that happened before that she fell pregnant, but that's why she ended up home. So it swings backwards and forwards, and then, as I said, Pip finds this diary, and she starts reading this diary, and and she snuck the diary out of the secondhand store, because she's not supposed to take stuff home, and she snuck it into the house, back into her parents' house, and she was reading it, and she read right through the diary throughout the book. And so she was using it as a form of escapism, and I'm sure all of you can relate to that. We all use books for escapism. And then she started to realize that this lady actually had a lot in common with her, and there was all these events that happened in the diary, and it was somewhat abruptly ended, and so that projected the story even further of Pip going to find this lady to return the diary. Subsequently, they become friends, and both storylines are very similar in things that have happened in their life that they've got stuck in themselves, and you know, they're not moving forward and all the rest of it, and subsequently they help each other to see the light, for lack of a better term, to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it was like, I'm giving it a 4 stars because it was such a poignant story, because that is so true for so many people. They get stuck in their own head and they just can't move forward, and you know, sometimes we just need someone that's so unexpected to help us to get through that. And yeah, so it was a really good book. I really enjoyed it, and I've never read anything by Imogen Clark before, but I'm definitely going to be reading. She's the best, on the cover it says that she's the best selling author of Where the Story Starts. So I'm going to look and see if that's not on Kindle Unlimited and add it to my list. I really enjoyed the language in this book too. Like, it was, because Evelyn is 70 years old in 2019. So, you know, a lot of her life has passed and all the rest of it. But there's a lot of language in this book that was very reminiscent of my grandmother. you know, like the word wretched. No one really uses the word wretched these days. My grandmother used to use it all the time. Anything that was not quite right, it was wretched. And, you know, there was just all these little bits and pieces. Like there was one line in there where Pip was like, her head was in the gutter about one of Evelyn's long-term friends, and she goes, "Oh, it's nothing like that, you mucky little pup." And I just, as I read it, I just had this vision of this elegant lady standing there and just saying this to Pip. Like, it was just a great read. Like, and as I said, I started it after midnight last night and I finished it today. I have done other things. I've been stitching and all that sort of stuff, hence why that's what this is. That's my stitching that you can see there in case you're wondering what that is. So I can't actually show you the design because it's for the magazine. But you can see it next week if you want to purchase the magazine. It'll be in there. So, so basically I've been doing things and whatnot, and I started reading it on Kindle last night, and then I started listening to it today while I was doing other things. And and then this afternoon my eyes were getting a little bit tired from reading, and so I come out and started doing some more stitching, and being out in the bright light helps too because my house is really dark. But I've thoroughly enjoyed the story, and I'm sure if you like those cozy little books that have like a little bit of tinged with sadness, because it is tinged with sadness, but it also is happiness as well, and you like those books that have diary entries in it, you'll really like this. Like, there's not it's not every second page that there's a diary entry. It just touches on it, and it's one particular diary. And Evelyn had been a avid journal documenter all her life from a very young age, and right up until 1983 when something happened that changed her life, and basically from that point she didn't really keep a journal, or she didn't keep a journal at all. But the journal ended up in the secondhand shop with a bunch of paperback books, and she was furious with her nephew when you know how, like, you know, when you come across like an auntie or a grandparent, and you're well-meaning and you're trying to help them to tidy up a little bit because they're a little bit of a, you know, hoarder, or the house is just getting away from them, they're just not quite there to keep on top of it, and they really should get some help, and they're just at that age where they're still defiant. Evelyn was like that with her nephew. And so there was like there was cute little moments there, like where I just thought, you know, like we've recently, in our recent history, my husband and I, both his grandparents were 96 and 95 when they passed away, and they were both still living at home, although his grandfather, reluctantly, we got him into a nursing home because it was just too much for Nan in the end. And, you know, and so she was always very reluctant to get help, you know, pride always got in the way. And so little bits and pieces throughout this story just, you know, just reminded me that these things are very common in a lot of people's lives, and the fact that that we can get trapped in our own mind and all the rest of it. That light is bright. I didn't realise how bright it was until I looked in it. And that's essentially what the story is about, is at its core. It is about when you get trapped in your own mind, and, you know, the stories that we tell ourselves. And it's also about forgiveness too. Like, the story is about forgiveness and forgiving yourself, and, you know, especially when the circumstances that happen, the tragedy that happens, is completely out of your control. Like, but you can't stop the human emotion. You can't stop it. It's just the way it is, and you've got to work through that, and be it a very dark time and all that sort of stuff. But I am giving it 4 stars. I absolutely love the story, and I think if you like that sort of thing, you'll like it too. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to reading some more of Imogen Clark's books, and I'm going to go and find where the story starts and see what that's all about as well. All right, I will see you after the next book. I have a couple more books to get through before I upload this, so hopefully, fingers crossed, I can get through them over the weekend. I've got a lot of stitching to do, and I've got photography to do as well, so most of the books that I'll be listening to this weekend will definitely be on audiobook. All right, so I will see you in the next check-in. All right, so I've finished another book for this week. This one is actually a bingo prompt that I needed to read, and it was a book about birds. So I chose, and I've got my Goodreads here because it is a very long title. I chose The Falcon Thief, A True Tale of Adventure, Treachery, and the Hunt for the Perfect Bird. Now, I listened to this on audio, and I just finished it. When I looked at this up, because as I said, this is a bingo prompt, so I knew about this before anybody else did, that it had to do with birds, and that was the prompt. So I went through a whole heap of books that I had here that had birds on the cover, but it wasn't really about birds or anything like that. So I turned to Goodreads to find a book, and this one kept coming up. So I thought, well, hey, and it's based on a true story as well. So it is revolving around what do they call it? It's like a subsection of the police force, and all they were tasked for in England was to go after people that were stealing eggs and wildlife, protected species, all that sort of stuff, trying to get laws passed and all that sort of thing. So there is a huge timeline in this book, and did I mention that it is actually a true story? And it is starting off in 2010 at the Birmingham International Airport, and with the arrest of Jeffrey. I can't think of his last name now, but anyway, he's an Irish-born egg thief, basically, and so he has spent his whole life eluding police or escaping or absconding after he gets arrested and stuff like that. And so a detective is called in that is the head of this task force. He's more of a consultant now than actually in the task force, and so he can't really, execute warrants or anything like that. So basically he gets called in, and then they go to the airport, and then they work out it's this guy. And then basically it is told from first-hand accounts, newspaper reports and all that sort of stuff. And the author, which is Joshua Hammer, and so he has put all this together, and it basically follows the timeline of this Irish-born egg thief and the lengths that they go to, and and all that sort of stuff. And so so it's just basically the detective trying to stop him, and it's sort of told in story form. So it was actually really enjoyable. Like, when I read it, I didn't think it was going to be like that. Read the blurb, I actually knew what this was about, and that's why I picked it, because I thought it would be interesting. It had some moments where it was a little bit lacking. It could have had a little bit more, actually probably could have been left out. Like, it wasn't really relevant, I felt, and stuff like that. But it was a good story. Like, it was quite interesting. So basically, like, when he was caught at Birmingham Airport, where the story starts at the beginning of the book, and then it goes, as I said, it goes over, like, and not just him, there was other people that were mentioned that were part of it, and how falconing, the sport, is so huge in the Arab countries and stuff like that, and why it so you get that storyline as well, why it becomes so popular, why people were wanting to smuggle these birds, because the Arabs believe that especially the royalty that are into the sport, they travel the globe and stuff like that. And it also touches on other animals that have been hunted to extinction because of the sport in the Arab area, like the United Emirates. And so basically it's just touching on all of that, and sort of giving you some detail and a better understanding about why they're into it, why this falcon egg smuggling came to be, and why it's so popular, and why people take the risks and stuff like that, because the Arabs are paying such high money, because not all of them, I'll just clarify, not every person is a no good Nick, and that some people breed them and stuff like that, and they've crossbred them, and that can only be done by artificial insemination. And so they're touching on all different aspects of it, and why it's so popular, and why the smuggling had become so popular because it was worth a lot of money, because the Arabs believe that a bird from the wild is going to be a stronger, better bird in their given sport, which is like hunting with falcons or birds of prey, and because it's not just falcons that this particular person was getting. So this wasn't one, as I said, this wasn't a Kindle Unlimited one. It is available on Kindle. You can buy it here in Australia. It's $21.99. I got it on audio, which meant that it was only, I think I got it with my credit for the month, which was whatever that fee is, I think $16.95. So I'm glad that I ended up doing that, picking this book though, because I learned a lot of stuff about it that I wouldn't have otherwise known about. I didn't realize that falconing was still a big deal. This is 2010, and they were and the section of the police department was still current at 2020, and this was published in February 2020. I've just got the details of the book here. And because, as I said, I listened to it on audio, I don't actually have a Kindle copy. And so basically, yeah, it's still a thing. It's a big thing. And there was just all the things that they were talking about, and the smuggling that happens in Africa and places like that, and the people that are trying to conserve it, and how this police officer was starting to be seen by activists as, the biggest activist. And he's not. He said, "I'm not an activist. I just don't want people to be breaking the law," and stuff like that. And so it was I really enjoyed it. I didn't think I was going to, and I really enjoyed it. So if you're interested in true crime stuff, and and you're interested in knowing more about this situation with the falconing and stuff like that, they don't really go into huge detail about the sport, but how it's driving the industry, essentially, because that's what it is. It's a smuggling industry, and how there are people trying to stop it. And it also talks about some of the birds that were almost extinct, and how breeders have brought them back from extinction as well. So it's not all a doom and gloom. This guy has done a really well-rounded book, because he's covered so many aspects of it. There was a couple of spots where I'm like, oh God, he's just droning on. I really don't want to know about it. Just get on with the story. What happened to this guy? Did he go to jail? Or, that's what I wanted to know. But yeah, no, other than that, it was a pretty good book. And that was I think chapter 10 was a little bit slow, but then it picked up, and I think it was chapter 13 was the other one that was a little bit slow. Or maybe it was 14. I don't know. It's around there somewhere. Anyway, it was just a lot of facts and figures that really didn't make I didn't really need to know that. I was more interested in them bringing birds back from extinction and stuff like that, and how, there was one part of it where in Africa with the vultures, so they're a bird of prey as well, and how this one particular person now, anytime they see a dead cow or dead animal on the side of the road, they actually stop and pull it off the road so the vultures don't get hit by trucks or cars or anything like that. So it's all that sort of stuff that was in it, which made it really, really good and interesting. Had it just been about that guy and his story and how he got arrested, I don't think it would have been as interesting, but having all that other stuff in it, it was really good. So, as I said, if you're interested in that sort of stuff, I would definitely get the... What's the title again? The Falcon Thief, A True Tale of Adventure, Treachery, and the Hunt for the Perfect Bird. That's a pretty big mouthful of a title, but I really liked it, and I'm giving it 3 stars. It's not a bad book, and it's not an exceptional book, but it is still a good book, and the author done a really good job with it. So 3 stars from me. All right, I'm off to do another bingo prompt. I'll talk to you soon. Hey, I'm back. I have just finished reading Gone Girl by Jillian Flynn. Now, this book is... I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I'm giving it 3.5 stars. It's not an exceptional book, but it was a page turner. This was a bingo prompt. So my bingo prompt this week was to read a book that has been hyped as a page turner. And I've seen so many reviews on this and saying how amazing it was. It was a real page turner and all that sort of stuff. So that's why I picked this book. Now, it was published in 2014. It has 463 pages. Obviously, it's by Jillian Flynn, as you can see there. And I was pleasantly surprised with this book. Yes, it did meet the prompt well. I did find it to be a page turner. It is a thriller mystery, and it is following two main characters, which is Amy and Nick. And on their 5th anniversary, Amy goes missing. And so the story starts there where she's gone missing. And essentially, Nick ends up being the prime suspect. So, and he swears blind that he didn't do it. And so, as the cover says, there are 2 sides to every story. One of the sides of the story is a little bit strange, but anyway, I did thoroughly enjoy it. And as I said, it was a page turner. It's a thriller. I really, honestly, in the first 60 pages, there was a little bit of a tidbit thrown in there that really threw me off. So kudos to the author for that, because I actually thought Nick's father had killed her. So the police are investigating him, and on their anniversary, Amy does this, that has always done this thing where she does like a treasure hunt for him to get his present, and so she writes all these clues and he's got to work out the clues, and he's not very good at it. But in the first when she first disappears and they search his house and whatnot, the police find a clue, so that the police are drawn to that clue. And there's also a diary that is found as well, so they're also working off the diary, although that's found a little bit later. But the book is told in 2 narratives. So you've got Nick's narrative of him at this present time being investigated for her disappearance, suspected murder, and then there's her narrative in there where it's going, like, it's years of diary entries that she's putting in, like, and that's dated throughout. And so so you're reading the 2 narratives. And so basically he's trying to figure out where his wife's gone, because he's swearing black and blue that he didn't do it. And then you're getting to know Amy, but she's painting a picture that of Nick being really aggressive as a partner and stuff like that. So, and just their marriage on the rocks, and so, yeah. And then in the middle of the book, it takes a twist, and it's just like, what the hell? I did not see that coming, because as I said, I think it was in the first 50 or 60 pages, there was just this little tidbit where his dad, who has Alzheimer's, was at the house, had left the care facility and was at the house, and he was going bitch, 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 like, about her. Now, I will say there is a lot of swearing in this. If that's not something that you like, there is swearing in this, and the C word is in this, and the F word is in this, and the C word is not part of my daily vocabulary, but some of the other words, they don't bother me, so that sort of stuff doesn't bother me at all. But if you are someone that does not like those sort of words, then they are in here. I found the story to be really good, really compelling. It kept me there. I was curious to know what happened and where it was going to go. And poor Nick, I felt so sorry. I felt like I hated him a little bit. Like, I hated the fact that, you know, Amy was painting this picture of him, and it was making me not like him. But at the same time, I felt really sorry for him, because he was swearing. He was adamant that he did not do anything to her. And the poor guy had so many things just going against him. And all the rest of it. I mean, there were some things that he was wrong and he probably shouldn't have done and stuff like that. But yeah, but Amy, she's a questionable character. I did not like her at all. I really liked the way that it was set out. I liked the way that the author kept it fast paced. I liked that there was little tidbits to make me think maybe. There was one part in there where Amy was Amy's talking and she goes Nick and me, and then the authors put in brackets correct grammar. Obviously she's been pulled up on that before. So yeah, there was a lot of little bits and pieces. I didn't really like how it ended. I wanted it to go so the other way, not the way it did. And yeah, so I've given it 3.5 stars. As I said, I thoroughly enjoyed the book, and it definitely is a page turner. It kept me. I was envisioning really easy as well. Like, you know how when you pick up some books and they just don't pull you in? This really did pull me in. I could feel that, like even the investigators and stuff like that, I was siding with one of the investigators because she was doubting that Nick had done it and all the rest of it. So she could see the good in him and stuff like that. The poor guy. I'm just like, oh man, I couldn't imagine something like that happening. Like, and how I'd react. Like, there were. This is a bit of a spoiler. And like when he was standing in front of the cameras, he ended up smiling. Like his wife just has disappeared, and because he's just awkward, he ended up doing this big smile. And then this other person, this 40-something lady, was basically, for the lack of a better term, was coming on to him. And like when they were searching the wooded area and whatnot, he was to stand at the refreshment bar, and she's turned up, and then she's gone up to him to try and took a selfie, and he smiled in that as well. So this has all ended up over the news, and the media's hounding him, and all this stuff, and all this stuff's coming out, and you know, all this stuff is just going on in the book, and it was easy to keep along with. Like it wasn't hard to keep track of everything that was happening. The story flowed so well. I enjoyed the writing, but I don't analyze writing either. So I just give my honest opinion of how I felt while reading the book. I don't overanalyze people's writing because I can't write for crap. Okay, I cannot. I'm not a writer. I don't even try to think of myself as a writer or anything like that. I can't write for crap. And if anybody's ever got a text from me, they know that. I'm terrible with grammar, and I'm terrible with, because I do a lot of, I just write and get out what I've got to get out in a text and all the rest of it. But so for me, I don't really analyze the writing as such, because who the hell am I to analyze something? This woman's put a lot of work into this, and I'm not going to rip it apart. I liked how the book flowed. It flowed really, really well. It kept me turning the pages, which is exactly what I wanted from the book. It kept me enthralled. It pulled me in. It was easy to imagine the scene and all the rest of it. So I'm really curious now to go and watch the movie, because I haven't watched that either. I don't watch a lot of movies. I'm not a movie buff. Although at the moment I'm watching The Godfather with my husband. So basically I'm going to go and watch the movie. So tomorrow, after I've done everything for work and whatnot, I'm going to have a late lunch and I'm going to sit down and watch the movie and see if I imagined everything how I imagined. I have seen some reviews of the movie saying that it was pretty crappy. I don't even think I've seen a trailer for it, to be honest, so I will suss that out, and next week I might give you an update on that, because I'm curious to see if they manage to get the amazingness of this book into the movie, because sometimes they hit the mark, other times they don't. But I absolutely love this, and as it says here, like, there's two sides to every story, and this is definitely two sides to the story. But I think that you should read this book because it's well worth it. I think you'll enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure you will too. All right, that's it. All right, so thank you so much for joining me today. I do hope that you enjoyed listening to what I thought about the books. As I said, I'm not an analytical reader at all. I just get into a book to enjoy the story. And for the most part, I think most people are like that. And so I hope that you have found something to put onto your TBR and you enjoy them just as much as I did. Again, thank you so much for spending some time with me. If you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please do hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon, and also give me a thumbs up as well. Leave me emoji in the comments, the book emoji, so I know that you've got this far. And that's it from me this week. Have a great week, everybody. I'm hoping to have another fabulous week of reading. It will be a fair few audiobooks this week because I am at the long arm machine finishing off a friend's quilt. So yeah, have a great week, everybody, and I will catch you all again next time. Bye for now.